Alrighty, welcome back to the Gex 3D and to the Gecko commentary with me, Skully the Metalhead. We've completed the first tier of missions, and we're about to enter our first bonus mission, Aztec to Step, which I don't exactly know what is a reference to. Probably some kind of dance movie, but yes, as you can tell, it's parodying Indiana Jones and the Temple of Stuff. I don't know, the way these bonus missions are generally set up is that you're going to be running through a specific level set piece, and basically collecting a certain tier of items, in which case this is jewels. I'm not necessarily sure what kind of jewel. Excuse me. But, yeah, that's pretty much all we're doing. Ouchies. Yeah, that's another little weird quirk that Gex has. Apparently whenever you run into walls at full speed, he just falls over and has stars over his head, which I'm not necessarily sure why that happens. I mean, a similar thing did happen in Sonic Adventure, actually, if you were going at full speed and you just collided into a wall, but I don't know, late 90s realism, I guess? I don't know. These bonus missions, I think I might be doing 2 of them in this part, although I might be saving the next one for the next part. But again, they contain a lot of... damn, so sorry. Yeah, they contain a lot of interesting set pieces that I'm kind of disappointed weren't fleshed out into full levels. And I mean, some are based on previous levels that you play, you know, throughout the game, but I don't know, there are levels like this, and where I just think, you know, we could have had a level, you know, where we could actually play through and have, like, you know, missions where you collect remotes and all that. I don't know, it just seems like a bit of a wasted opportunity on my end. Also, another fun little fact is that I believe the music you're hearing right now will actually be reused in a later level with a completely different theme, which is rather bizarre, but yeah, we'll see what happens when we get to it. Da-na-na. Actually, no, I'm just thinking about my previous statement for a second, and I'm wondering whether or not I might actually be correcting that, because it might be a different variation. But yes, what you're playing bonus missions for is to collect golden remotes, which I don't exactly know. I can't quite remember what they do, actually, but it's going to be a blast finding out. And thus, our mission is complete. We go down to the secret entrance. Blimey, that water's loud. I should probably turn down the volume a little bit. That's not very nice. And there we go, golden remote. And now we head off to our next level, in Frankensteinfeld, as you will see shortly. Now, in the event that Gex 3D Enter the Gecko has a lot less story content to talk about, I have my handy-dandy little tangents, which means I can talk about stuff while, you know, just generally being my rambly old self. Whoa, that's a bit of slow down. I should think about that for a second. But yes, we're back to the horror trope levels. Excuse me. I can't quite remember how many of these are in the game, but yeah, as I mentioned last part, this game does tend to reuse level themes quite a bit, which again, I don't necessarily blame, because, you know, this was running on the PlayStation 1, and, whoa, glitching there a little bit, but anyway. But yeah, I don't necessarily blame it because, you know, PlayStation 1, space and all that. And again, like I mentioned before I divulged into a little bit of an embittered tangent about core design and Crystal Dynamics not making anything but Tomb Raider games. Like, I mean, I really think that a Gex game, had it been made today, would have been fantastic to see what kind of level parodies I could have done. And I suppose to note the difference is that this level, by comparison to the previous one, feels a lot more sparse. And it kind of harkens back to that, you know, Sonic Lost World sense of level design, actually, where it all feels very segregated from a realistically grounded setting, which again, I suppose you could say it is semi-realistically grounded, in quotation marks. I'm talking about visuals here, in the sense that everything has like a solid background and everything, but I don't know if you could see over there, there's nothing but black space, and if you fall down, well, it's a bottomless pit and you die, clearly.
Have some of that.
But I suppose it's just one of those artistry things in video games that you just kind of have to take at face value. Loading, we are duh. In any case, I think it's time for a yummy tangent. God, I'm not sure if it's my video editor doing that, but I should probably check that out. But in any case, I suppose if there's anything I can talk about, it's probably the control changes from Gex 1 to Gex 2, since obviously, if you've watched my horribly messed up review, which I have no idea where the hell went wrong, yeah, Gex 1 was a 2D platformer, and this one's made the jump to 3D, and there are quite a few control differences. I think the most noticeable one that I can talk about, which I probably should have mentioned last part, is the ability to climb on walls, which in Gex 1 you could climb on pretty much any surface and just maneuver your way around the level, whereas in this one, Gex only seems to do it selectively. And that's something that's always baffled me, because, well, I suppose you could say it would break the game in some aspects, but considering the level design and how sparse it is in areas like this, I don't really see what the problem would be, because, I mean, it's, you know, it's Gex, he's not fucking Spider-Man or Jesus. Well, he's not Jesus anyway, but, you know, I mean, he's not Spider-Man or anything like that, so he's not exactly going to swing from web to web over to another surface. I mean, there are certain parameters, but I still feel as if omitting the ability to climb on any surface is, well, a bit of a detriment, to be perfectly honest. But, in essence, though, and as far as any other controls are concerned, it's all still there. Again, you can still tail bounce, you can still attack things, you can still leap flies and gain power-ups, although the power-ups, as I mentioned earlier, are significantly limited compared to the amount of freedom that you had with the original Gex. But I don't think it's necessarily anything to cry spilt milk over, because I'd say Gex still kind of works in a general sense, and unlike the other power-ups in the... God damn, I gotta do something about this cough. In the previous game, it's not necessarily a completely different ability, it's just more so an extension of what Gex could already do. Get out of that. Just trying to remember for a second. No, I don't think that's really all that there is to the controls. By the way, don't touch those things because they will hurt you and they will die despite how benevolently friendly they look. And they kind of remind me of those, fuck, I forgot what those were called. I think it was like one of those Nintendo things that you see in the side of those Mario and the Sonic of the Olympic Games things. Can't remember the bloody names of those things are called. Then again, I'm not a Nintendo guy, as you could probably tell by the amount of Sega worship that I do. Also, I'm not necessarily sure whether or not it's this area or someplace different, but I do believe there is actually a little secret area where you can find a little homage to Frankenstein's monster, where there's this Frankenstein creature being electrocuted. It's a rather creepy room, considering how relatively tame this game is. And I say tame because, I mean, Gex isn't exactly anything, you know, edgy or hardcore or anything, but at the same time, though, in the late 90s period of games, there were a lot of times when platformers decided to up the ante a little bit, which I guess is... Okay, sorry about that, was a little bit of a distraction, and we have returned to the earth in which we tread. Should probably turn that down a little bit. But yes, final mission of Frankensteinfeld. You can get it, it's a reference to Seinfeld in television. Yeah. But in any case, I suppose if there is anything to talk about this level at all, comparatively to every other level in the game outside of the little Frankenstein Easter egg, this one has a rather ingeniously hidden secret. Well, I'd say ingeniously hidden, like that. I don't know. There's just something about that that just seems a little bit... I don't know, dickish. Like, I mean, yeah, I don't mind, like, secret little closets like that in late 90s video games, since I guess they are still running on the archaic logic of, okay, we need to hide secrets pretty much anywhere so that people with absolutely nothing to do with their time can just search around and find things there. But at the same time, I find it a little bit bullshit if they don't put any kind of subtle indicator, because the one thing that I learned throughout the Crash Bandicoot games is that whenever Naughty Dog wanted you to find a hidden secret, usually they would have, like, a certain cue so that the player would have an incentive to search there. Like, I mean, for example, like, I mean, if there was, like, an empty path, but there was a stray Wampa fruit that was hovering over a bottomless pit, you go, what the hell's that doing there? So then you hop on there and you find, oh, it's an invisible box, let's keep on traveling, and then you find, you know, like a secret gem or boxes that you need to smash, and, you know, that's a subtle bit of design that I think, you know, can really go a long way into letting people find your secrets without necessarily going, oh, look, it was behind the bushes that you wouldn't have had any idea to search, unless, of course, you were really bored and you did the cheat codes. You know, and I think even if you're not going to necessarily be that subtle about it, you can even handle it in a similar manner to... I don't know. I kind of forgot what I was going about this. I was going to suggest Silent Hill, but I was thinking more in terms of the way in which to point players where to go, which they usually did with, you know, changing camera angles and just a subtle way of saying, over here, player. It's just a little trick, you know, to direct, I suppose, to direct players on where to go without necessarily, you know, railroading them with, you know, constant text messages saying, Ink Snake, you have to go this way. There is no other alternative. Which I guess a lot of people take a lot of eye with. It's like, oh, well, I like to find things for myself. And then those are those same people that then tend to complain about, oh, well, I didn't know where to go. This game sucks. But I mean, seriously though, how in the flying fuck would you have known to go in there? Like, I mean, I think at the very least Crystal Dynamics could have done is that they should have just, you know, put in like a little broken crack within the windows that at least shows the player, at the very least slightly, that there is something beyond there and that maybe they should check it out. I mean, it isn't immediately obvious, but it is something that for those of the more attentive players, they would pick up and then go, oh, I wonder what's behind here. And then they find the little secrets, feel proud of themselves, and then wank themselves to death because they think that they're clever when they just wasted their time playing video games. And of course you can hear the voice switch I did right there, which is based on different emulation, because yes, this is the US version, which is, yeah, has Dana Gould voicing it. As you can probably tell, he does a lot of more silly voices compared to Leslie Phillips. But again, it's a Gex voice that everybody's familiar with, and plus, considering the fact that Dana Gould did write a lot for the game, I'm not necessarily gonna harp on it too much, because again, the man is quite funny. And I think if there was to be a Gex game in this day and age without him, the games, well, at least writing-wise, would probably suffer for it. But then again, I think I'll probably save my tangent of what if a Gex game was made in this day and age for another time, because I think my opinions on that kind of flip-flop between hell yeah, let's do it, and ooh, this probably will be a bad idea, let's just not. But what do I mean by that? Ooh, the best is yet to come. Yeah, that's another thing I could probably bring up, the camera of this game. For the most part it works decently, and it actually does have a couple of modes in which you can switch through between being completely manual, semi-automatic, or, you know, just completely automatic, in which you can just flip here and there, excuse me, and just generally, you know, adjust it to your liking, although there are times where all three modes don't really help, and in the times where you can't change the camera, it usually makes an annoying cuckoo sound that they thankfully took out for Gex Deep Cover Gecko. Yes, thank you, the Nutty Professor, or Professor Frank, whatever's your poison. But yeah, while the camera is probably going to be a eye to some people, it doesn't really bother me too much because it doesn't really get in my way all that often. Then again, there is the odd occasion when it does, but I'm usually pretty cool about it. Anyway, with the horror trope level, we can finally move on to something new and exciting. And no, not that bonus level, we'll be getting to that later. And we've unlocked our next boss. Mushu Pork. What the fuck, man? Oh well. Anyway, we're moving on to greener pastures. Well, that's a bit of an oxymoron because we're moving on to a machinery level. Scale the launch tower. I love the music to this area, and by music I mean like the general music to the first area. And again, I know a lot of people probably tend to prefer the more bouncy, energetic themes that we're going to be hearing in a second. Yeah, the bouncy techno beats of getting supercharged as you scale the launch towers, but for me, I love the ambient piece that plays in the beginning of Circuit Central. That it's just so dark, ambient, and even though some might say it's ill-fitting to the level, there's just something so cyberpunk about it that, well, I suppose the ambient drone and the fact that outside of, you know, the rock and/or roll and metal music is that ambient is probably one of my favourite music genres, but holy fuck, that music is just so good. And yes, I think as you could probably tell there, as I probably should have explained, when it happened, if you fall off, you basically just fall back to the beginning. You don't get damaged, not unless of course you hit those little disc thingies. But yeah, pretty trippy area. Actually kind of reminds me of that one segment in DMC Devil May Cry when you're traversing across the news logo. Which is probably the most colourful part of that game that isn't just, you know, constant salts of red and really oversaturated brown. But yeah, as you can probably tell, I really love the look of Circuit Central. It has a very Tron-looking feel, but at the same time also it looks like it was set inside a computer, and I suppose for any kids who were growing up in, you know, the late 90s, they probably assumed that this was what existed inside their computer / the internet.
One for me and
Which, to be perfectly honest, I couldn't really blame them, because this area was inspired by the inside of a computer. Well, a 90s computer, I should say. I'm pretty sure modern hardware has probably long since gone past this archaic-looking stuff.
pardon my tongue, darling.
Pardon my tongue, darling. But yeah, as you can see, the secret remote in this level is actually pretty easy to find too. It's just hidden from view from your camera. But I suppose it's kind of similar to how it was handled in the previous horror. The first horror level, I should say, Smellraiser, was immediately obvious to you because, again, you kind of saw it with one of the mission tiers. But outside of that, I think it was pretty cleverly hidden. And we've completed our first Circuit Central mission. Overall, though, I'd say Circuit Central, I'm hard-pressed to say is my favourite level in the game. I mean, I love its aesthetics and music very much, but at the same time, I do like a lot of the other levels in this game, too. I don't know. I'd say Circuit Central is probably one of my favourites, just to put a blanket term on it. And our next mission, we have to walk across the bridges, which we can activate by using these green energy light thingies. Supercharged! Yeah, and off we go. To places unknown. Yeah, there isn't really much else to talk about in this level. It's really just kind of a basic thing that you do. Although, one thing I can bring up, because I was just looking at trivia, which is why I wasn't really paying attention, is something I'm not necessarily sure is true for both versions of the game, depending upon whether or not you're playing the European or American release. But Gex apparently has 700 lines in this game. And I'm talking about specifically about the PS1 version. I'm not necessarily sure about the N64 version, but yeah, 700 lines in this game. I believe a good chunk of them are also reused from the first game, because there is a cheat code you can enter which basically says, basically translates as to press the select button and then you can pretty much just have Gex recite one of his lines, which, and many of them I did hear in the first game itself, so I'm thinking that a lot of the 700 were kind of borrowed from that one. Not a bad sense of reusal though, because again, there are plenty of new lines that were recorded specifically for this game, which play a whole lot, but the thing of it is that I haven't gotten all 700 lines to play naturally. I've usually just had to select them at will. That being said though, I do think it is pretty nice that there was 700 lines recorded for the game. I mean, if only for the sake that, you know, Gex's dialogue wouldn't really get tiresome per level. Because he won't just recite these references in specific levels either, he'll just recite them pretty much anywhere. Although there are level-specific quotes that he will say, like in the horror levels he will say something like, Freddy, Jason, Jason, Freddy. Or, this place is bigger than Oliver Reed's bar tab. You know, which are usually key to specific levels, but, you know, it's still nice to have such an attention to detail. What the hell are those things? Probably should have paid more attention in IT class, just to learn computer parts and all that kind of stuff, which I'm pretty sure most people on YouTube will probably know what it is. Oh, actually, it's a fucking thingamajig, whatever. Anyway, up we go.
All this technology.
Oh well. Now I need to find another quote, because I'm running out of things to say. And we have an extra life, yippee-ki-yay. Let's see. Oh, here's another fun fact I can bring up, which I'm kind of running out of, so I probably need to find new trivia. Yeah, apparently, well, again, that's really weird considering the fact that what Crystal Dynamics are doing today, but yeah, apparently Gex runs on the same engine that Tomb Raider ran off, which is incredibly bizarre and quite a nice bit of foreshadowing, really, to real-life events, but yeah, nice little fun fact. I think Gex honestly runs a bit smoother than the original Tomb Raider, because, again, if you haven't gone back and played the original Tomb Raider, those controls are agony to play. Ugh. God. Well, that being said, though, I do still enjoy most of the core design era Tomb Raider games, whoops. But, you know, just small mercies, I suppose. I think I might have gone the wrong way, and that entire bit of commentary might be a little bit pointless. Ouch. I could do it. You know what, fuck it, yes. Optimus Prime transition activate. And we have returned to where we were supposed to go, and I just wasted a whole bunch of fucking time. Jesus Christ. You know, if I'm gonna keep up with all these TV puns in the titles, I might as well just call this part filler material. Oh well, seems fitting. Anyway, we return to another section, which is now significantly more orange, and is kinda trippy, to be perfectly honest. Actually, now this area kinda reminds me of that, Courtney Gears area from Ratchet & Clank 3. Up yours, Arsenal! I know, it just has like a very purple look to it. Huh. Did I do that? No. I wasn't sure whether or not I hit that or not. There's a weird little annoying quirk Jesus. There's a weird little annoying quirk I can bring up about the checkpoint boxes, that if you happen to have like a fly power-up or fly to act as an extra hit point on standby, for whatever reason, if you hit a checkpoint box, Gex automatically eats the fly, which is something that puzzles me, because again, you don't get anything outside of the checkpoint saving your progress, and I think it is a quirk that's, you know, left over, because, you know, if you have two flies buzzing around you, Gex will automatically eat the previous one that he had from before he hit the box, which is kind of bizarre to me, which again, I can understand why they would do it, because they obviously don't want you to be overpowered in a video game where you're just a jumpy lizard. I don't know, it's just kind of annoying, because, like, I mean, you could lose out on a power-up that was actually pretty good. And if you can see that little help icon up there, I believe that actually leads you to a defunct Crystal Dynamics website. And I only really say that because I remember wondering what the hell that was, and it just said, you know, visit crystaldynamics.com. I can't remember if it was either a Crystal Dynamics link towards, like, maybe a Gex website way back when, or if it was just something that was done purely for the Crystal Dynamics itself, but I don't know. God, I'm running out of commentary, which is a little bit puzzling and worrying. I mean, I could wax on about, like, old television shows and such, but I don't know whether or not that'd be entirely relevant. Then again, I don't want to expunge all my topics immediately, because Gex, for as much trivia as there is to the series, there really isn't that much to talk about in terms of, you know, out-of-world elements, and I suppose I could talk about references, but again, I don't think I'm nearly as well-versed in TV to really talk about a lot of them. Then again, I suppose I could probably delve into my history with the series a little bit, but I think I'll probably save that for a later part, because there's still quite a few levels to go, and even though we have already expunged quite a little bit of the series up to this point, there is still much more to cover. But again, the part's nearly over, so thankful for small mercies, I suppose. Anyway, we're coming to an end, so on that note, I am Skully, keep it new metal, and next time on the Gex 3D Enter the Gecko commentary, more adventures are to be had. This concludes our broadcast day.
Nice try, big boy.